You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, we're going to be starting a new series on the podcast called Run Up to the Ashes, where we're going to be talking about all things Ashes cricket in the lead up to this year's Ashes series. So stay tuned for future episodes in upcoming weeks. Joining me for episode 1 of Run Up to the Ashes is my good friend Asjad from Cricket For Us 2.0. Asjad, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Welcome back.
I'm glad I could be back on, and it's always great. It's an honor for me, as I always say. And yeah, man, very excited to talk about the Ashes because it's coming up. It's coming up soon, and very exciting time.
Absolutely. So let's talk about England's squad. We're going to discuss England's squad today. So let's remind people of England's Ashes squad that they've selected: Root, Anderson, Bairstow, Bess, Broad, Burns, Butler, Crawley, Hamid, Lawrence, Leach, Malan, Overton, Pope, Robinson, Wokes, and Wood. That's the squad England have selected. Now, Asjad, there's been a lot of criticism from England's fans. They don't like the squad. They don't like the selections that have been made. Obviously, no Ben Stokes, no Jofra Archer. They're big blows for England. We saw Ben Stokes bowling and batting in the nets recently. He may come back for the Ashes, but I don't think that will happen. Also, lots of criticism from England's commentators and pundits and experts within the game in England. David Lloyd didn't mince his words. He lashed out of the squad. He said, and I quote, "To say that I was surprised when I saw the squad England had picked to go to Australia would be an understatement. I was absolutely flabbergasted. They've picked a team of blockers, medium pacers, and short finger spinners. You don't exactly need to be a student of the game to know how that ends up in Australia. Good luck, lads," he said, unquote. So, Asjad, your thoughts on England's Ashes squad that they've selected for this series?
Do you know what? I looked at the squad, and thankfully you read it out to me as well. There's a couple of interesting omissions from there. Obviously, no Stokes, no Archer. And even if Stokes is fit, I don't see Stokes coming back without some match practice or anything like that. Now, there's an exclusion that people are actually been talking about. There's 3 people that I can think of. Number 1 is Saqib Mahmood. He has been great in the county scene. He's quick. He's got good line length. So just imagine someone not like not like Ollie Robinson, but someone who's about 5-6 miles quicker, a little shorter, a bit skiddier, but it has immaculate line and length. As I said, similar to someone like Ollie Robinson. He would be so good for England in the Ashes if they had selected him. But unfortunately, he's not been selected. There's another player, James Vince, who has consistently performed well, be it with the white ball, be it with the red ball. Dude can bowl a bit, but I'm not going to talk about his bowling. I'm going to talk about his batting on purpose. In the middle order, he could be so crucial for England. And yes, they've thankfully, they haven't thought, oh, let's put Zach Crawley at number 3, which they might do knowing England, right? But Darwin Malan is someone who did well in Australia last time, has been selected. So thankfully, one decision has been made that I was not pleasantly surprised about, but I was happy about. That Darwin Malan's been brought back. He didn't do the greatest against India, but the thing is, they brought him back just to see, oh, he's had a pretty good county stint this year. Let's see how he goes. He's got the T20 World Cup and then the Ashes. He's performed well in Australia before. The pitches suit him a lot more than the subcontinent. No arguments there, okay? So Darwin Malan is a good inclusion. And then there's a spinner that I want to talk about. It's surprisingly not a finger spinner. It's actually a wrist spinner in the name of Matt Parkinson. This guy is known as a younger version of Adil Rashid in England right nowadays. And he's doing a great job, a fabulous job. Sometimes, obviously, he's a wrist spinner, right? He's a leg spinner. He will go for runs, but he's an aggressive option, right? He bowls a bit slow and a bit loopy. But the thing is, I'm not going to compare the two. I'm not trying to compare the two. But just as a point of reference, Shane Warne didn't always bowl 55 miles an hour. Shane Warne also bowled around 50, around 48. He'd go up. Sometimes he'd bowl a bit quicker. But with bowlers like Rashid Khan in the world, right, who bowl 60 miles an hour plus 9 times out of 10, you forget, oh, a slow leg spinner or slow spinner could also do the trick. And I think Matt Parkinson, considering Shane Warne is from Australia, I think it kind of makes sense to include him. On top of that, Nathan Lyon from Australia, he gets that loop, and when he gets that overspin, he can also get bowl 55, 60 miles an hour, but he also changes his pace quite a bit. He can bowl around the 52, 53. So basically what I'm trying to say is England have missed a trick with not including a spinner like that, a spinner with variation. They've gone in with Dom Bess. I don't even want to talk about Dom Bess, so I'm going to put that aside. That was a purposeful stop, okay? That wasn't me trying to act like forgot my words. No, that was a purposeful stop because there's nothing I can say about Dom Bess, unfortunately. He's a young bowler. He gets thrusted into situations where he's going to get absolutely hammered and ripped. I don't understand, but fair enough. They're taking him. I don't fully agree with that. I think Parkinson over Bess would have been a great choice. I think Parkinson would have been great. And Jack Leach is someone who has done well for England, did well for England in the previous Ashes as well. He's not played as consistently for England, but when he has played in the county circuit, it's been very, very good from a Leach perspective as well. So I think domestically, Bess might be overshadowing Leach just a little bit, but as an actual bowler, as in terms of the intelligence a bowler has, I think Jack Leach is far superior to someone like Dom Bess. So thankfully, they've taken him. Haseeb Hameed came back into the England squad right now with 2-3 years of really bad form. Then 2020 was a bit better. 2021 was a lot better. Came back in, had a couple of good knocks against India. I don't know how he'll fare against the slightly bouncier tracks that are present in Australia. I think he's gonna struggle just a little bit. But thankfully, from an England perspective, Joe Root is still in the mix. Joe Root might be the key with Dawid Malan in this Ashes series, because Dawid Malan, Joe Root, they're the only consistent performers I can think of from the top of my head. I can't say that Rory Burns is going to score runs. I can't say Hameed can. I can't say Bairstow will even play. Okay, I can't tell you that. But the two batsmen I know England is 100% going to play is Dawid Malan and Joe Root. Their batting, they might have to go back to something along the lines you just mentioned off camera. A 40-year-old retiree from England might need to call someone like that, but I don't think they will. They'll stick with this squad, but it's difficult. Ollie Pope is so good domestically. He's just underperformed in international cricket. Maybe this is the time for him to pop back up. So yeah, England's choices for me are just a little off. Personally, I don't think it's a bad squad. I just think they've missed a couple of really big players, which I would have loved as an England selector to be able to select.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about their batting, Asjad, and some of the challenges and concerns that they may face in this Ashes series in Australia. Oh, yeah. Now, Asjad, the biggest problem England have, they haven't scored enough runs in Australia. As we know in Australia, on these flat pitches, you need to score 450 up towards 500 plus in the first innings to put the opposition under pressure. They haven't done that in the last two series. In the last two series, they've only scored 4 centuries. 2013-14 was Ben Stokes. He was the only centurion in his debut Ashes series. It was his second test match in that 5-0 loss. The last Ashes series in Australia, 2017-18, they scored 3 centuries. Dawid Malan, as you mentioned off camera, and Johnny Bairstow in Perth, and Alistair Cook scored that 200 in Melbourne. By then, the series was gone, and England lost the series by then. But Asjad, if England are going to post big scores, and we already mentioned him, Joe Root needs a big series like Alistair Cook did in 2010-11, if England have any chance of posting big scores. Because Alistair Cook, as we all know, in that 2010-11 Ashes series in Australia, which is the last time England won in Australia, he was in a purple patch of form. He was bringing up Bradman-like numbers. In that series, he scored 766 runs, at an average of 127, high score of 235 not out, 3 centuries and 2 half centuries. Joe Root can definitely replicate that in 2021-22 because he's in that purple patch of form himself. But Asjad, he can't keep doing it by himself. He needs that support from the other batsmen within the team. But you look at England's batting lineup, there's not much there, to be quite honest. There's no support whatsoever. You have a look at their averages. They're all averaging 30 and below. Burns, 32, Crawley, 28, Hameed, 35, Lawrence, 27, Milan, 28, Butler and Bairstow, 33, and Pope, 32. But you have a look at their first-class averages. It's better than their test average for some of them. Pope, averaging 53. Bairstow is averaging 47. Burns is averaging 41. And the rest are sort of averaging similar to their test average in first-class cricket. And that's a big problem because you need to transfer that form into test cricket. And England's batsmen have not done that. Asjad, as I said before, I don't see them posting big totals against this Australian attack. You know, Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, Lyon, maybe Pattinson, maybe Nessa, he plays. They're not going to do well. If Joe Root, in the unfortunate scenario, picks up an injury, and you don't wish that on anyone, but if he does, pulls a hamstring or pops a shoulder, etc., it may happen. You don't wish it, as I said before, you don't wish that on anyone. If you take him out of the side, they will struggle big time and they will not score any runs because Joe Root is the lifeline of this England batting unit. So, Asjad, what are some of the concerns and challenges that England's batsmen will face in this Ashes series, in your opinion?
Well, the biggest challenge is the fact that they can't bat and score big runs. You mentioned, so basically everything I'm going to say, you've all actually already mentioned. Now, scoring above 400 runs in Australia is a necessity. If I go back, apart from the India-Australia series last year, right, barring that, if a team scores 400 plus in the first innings, they are in good stead. Okay, and England haven't scored above 400 in Australia, be it maybe subcontinent not included, but even then they haven't scored 400 plus runs regularly enough or even at all for many years. Now that's a big problem from an England perspective. Last time I can probably think of was the match against Pakistan in England, right? That when Zach Crawley scored 267, and that's the last time I can recall England scoring or posting a big enough total that would be relevant in Australia. So their batting is a big problem. Joe Root, right? I'm going to come to the Joe Root part at the end. Okay, so you got Joe Root, you got Dawood Malan, you got Johnny Bairstow, who got a century in Australia as well. But these guys, barring Joe Root, are not as consistent. So that's why when I mentioned before that Root and Malan will have to be their stonewalls. They have to be the people who hang in there and just stick it out, right? Number 3 and number 4 need to be prominent fixtures. If any of them, not just one, if any of them gets injured, it's a problem for England. Okay. Now, I don't want to mention India, Australia 2020, 2021, where they lost more than half their side, but still won the series. I don't think Australia is going to make the same mistake again. I think Australia will not be looking at it as, oh, they don't have their main players. I know they probably didn't, but subconsciously you kind of set back, you kind of change your tactics when you realize, oh, Virat, this guy, like a list of 9 players that aren't available, we're going to easily win. So with England, they've selected the team, barring, like I said, 2 or 3 omissions, they've selected their best possible test squad. That's the funny thing. And even then everyone's like, oh, their batting isn't good enough. Rory Burns was in a purple patch of form in county cricket, if you recall, before the Sri Lanka series. And even after, I think. But in the Indian series, he just went completely out of it. Okay. He had one maximum, I think, 2 scores of above 40, 45. And I think in general, England's batting is going to struggle. That's the big takeaway. Then we come on to Australia's positivity, which is they've got genuine 90 plus mile an hour bowlers, right? Pat Cummins probably one of the slowest now. Surprise. Never thought I was going to say Josh Hazelwood was going to be so quick. But yeah, these 3-4 pace bowlers, consistent, they're sharp, they know exactly how to bowl in these conditions. And then you put this batting lineup in front of them. I'm afraid for England, they might get skittled out like Pakistan did in 2019, right? They were absolutely hammered by Australia. And something similar might just happen this time around because the Aussies' bowling attack is great. Nathan Lyon is looking to get 400 plus wickets. This guy has been consistent for Australia. Didn't have the best series against India, but he wants to come back. He wants to come and make a huge impact. Probably early prediction, highest wicket taker in the series. I'm telling you now, he's got that kind of mindset. I'm definitely calling it now. So their bowling, Australia's bowling is so good. England's batting is so weak. It just doesn't match. It's like a match not made for heaven, if you know what I mean. It's not good from an England perspective. And last point is Australia will be able to select most of the players they want, barring any injuries. They don't have the thought of no Archer, no Stokes, right? The only one I can think of is Wilpakowski. But the thing is, Wilpakowski played 2 games and then he was injured, or played a game and got injured, right? He's great. Australia's, I know that's another video where Australia's problems, we can discuss those. But all I'm going to say is Australia, even though they're playing in home conditions, right, with the players that they have, they are so dangerous. Okay. And I'm really, really scared from an England point of view. However, I'll keep mentioning this back again. Something happened like this last year where India was down and out. India came back and won the series 2-1. England may not have the bench strength to do that, but they have the bowlers. If I just quickly talk about some of the positives from an England standpoint, is the pace department. I know David Lloyd said, medium paces. You got Mark Wood, right? Mark Wood bowls genuine 90, 95 miles an hour. Okay. Everyone else, yeah, I understand, right? Overton can hit 90 miles an hour as well. But as long as it's a bowler who hits the deck hard, I think they would be quite effective. So Mark Wood for me, Craig Overton, Ollie Robinson, all great bowlers. James Anderson and Stuart Broad, their big names are the ones I'm scared about, because I think though they will not perform as well as England wants them to. They usually don't in Australia, right? That's a fact. But these other guys will be the positive aspect, I think, from an England perspective.
Absolutely. So a lot of challenges for an England batsman ahead. They've got to play out their skin, really, to compete up against Australia's quality attack. So moving on to the bowling, let's talk about England's bowling, Asjad. You touched on a bit of the bowling there. And talk about some of the challenges and concerns that they will face in this Ashes series. Now, Asjad, the problem England have had in the last 2 series in Australia is they haven't taken 20 wickets. They've lacked that pace. You need that pace to hurry up batsmen in Australia. For example, like Mitchell Johnson did in 2013-14. He absolutely terrified England's batsmen. You need that sort of pace. But England don't have that pace. You just mentioned Mark Wood and obviously no Jofra Archer. That's a big blow. Obviously no Ollie Stone either. They didn't pick Mahmood. I know he's really quick, so they're missing him. With Mark Wood, I think he's one injury away from being out of the series. He's injury prone, as we know. So England have to manage him carefully. That's what I'm trying to say there. But I think the attack may struggle again. As you remember, as we saw at the Oval on a flat pitch against India in the 4th test in the England summer, their bowling attack was ineffective and India just piled on the runs and they looked a bit samey in my opinion. There was no variety in the attack. And I think that's probably going to happen again in Australia. And they're going to have that same problem. You mentioned Leach and Bess in the spin department. I think they will struggle personally. Dom Bess, obviously, let's not talk about Dom Bess because he's going to get eaten alive if he plays. Jack Leach, he's going to struggle as well. Obviously, not as good as Nathan Lyon. Obviously, Moeen Ali retired. That put a spanner in the works. So now Jack Leach becomes the #1 spinner. So, Asjad, what are some of the concerns and challenges that England's bowlers will face in this Ashes series?
You touched upon them perfectly, to be honest. I'll talk about the spin. They don't have, I'm not going to say mystery spinner. I'm going to say they don't have anyone who spins it the other way with a wrist or anything like that, okay? They just have finger spinners genuinely. If they had Moeen Ali, it might have been a different story. But even Moeen Ali, I wouldn't say he's going to do a fantastic job in Australia. I think, considering the circumstances, Jack Leach would have been their best spinner, and then Matt Parkinson as a second spinner. Dom Bess, again, put aside, he has done really well in Sri Lanka. He's done well in certain situations. He's just, I don't think he'll be able to bring the same type of zing that Nathan Lyon does for Australia, unless he probably studies Nathan Lyon, studies exactly where he bowls, and then comes out and blows every single person in the world away by showing them, oh no, I can do it too. It's just that I'm 24 years old or 23 years old. I'm still learning. So that's something positive from an England standpoint. But the spin department looks a bit worse for wear. It doesn't look the best. Again, you don't have this in Australia that often, but they might need another spinner. And Joe Root isn't too bad as a part-time spinner. But again, Joe Root shouldn't be bowling that much, right? Jack Leach should be doing most of the spin bowling, but at least England has that approach. They have a part-timer to come in and kind of just chip in there. So it's not really a negative, but it's just the spin is weak. The spin department is a bit weak. In terms of the pace, you mentioned Mark Wood being an injury away from being kicked out of the series. I think we have to really notice how he goes in the T20 World Cup. And once Mark Wood is bowling quick and let's say survives 5 matches, right? 6 matches, then we can make a judgment call on, oh, how's he doing? Because his fitness has definitely improved. He is injury prone, but his fitness has definitely improved. And he, for me, in Australia, is England's #1 pacer. Right? He's quick. He's the deck hard. He's going to be dangerous as anything. And then Ollie Robinson, he was great in England, and I think he has that ability. Someone similar to Josh Hazelwood from, let's say, 4 years ago, right? 4 or 5 years ago when he was bowling around 83, 84 miles an hour, where he wasn't like super quick. I think Ollie Robinson has that line and length to make it difficult for the Aussie batsmen. But barring those two, their pace bowling doesn't look great either. They've got the best pace bowler in the world, arguably, right, in James Anderson, are the best dynamic duo in pace bowlers in Test cricket, arguably, in James Anderson and Stuart Broad. But they are not suited for these types of conditions as much they are, let's say, seaming conditions, or if they're going to even New Zealand, they perform a lot better in New Zealand than they have in Australia. So I think that's going to be a big blow for them, that they don't have the facility or the ability to get Jofra Archer into the squad, right? Because if they had Archer and Wood, okay, and then one of Anderson and Broad, okay, and maybe they think of Overton or Robinson, that bowling lineup automatically looks so much cleaner. It looks more secure because they have 2 bowlers who bowl pace, who hit the deck hard, and have good line and length, and can bowl straight up quick bouncers. Okay, here they're genuinely relying on one guy, which is Mark Wood. So that's another point with the bowling. And the last thing is, you mentioned it, I just want to touch upon this. The bowlers are not wicket-taking bowlers, right? The wicket-taking bowlers in the conditions that they've played. So again, maybe this is presumptuous of me of saying, oh, when they come to Australia, they won't take wickets. But what I'm trying to say is they've taken wickets at home, but they haven't taken as many wickets. They haven't taken wickets outside of England as often. So for that reason, I think the new guys, and by new guys, I mean Robinson. Okay. I mean Overton, even though Overton's played before, but I mean Overton. Chris Wokes is a guy I really think everyone's underrating in this, because he's definitely developed something, not just with his pace, but he can be a genuine replacement for James Anderson. And he offers a lot more with the bat. So that's something, if we talk about, Chris Wokes could be a very good inclusion in circumstances where Anderson gets walloped in 2 games. They're like, no, okay, Chris Wokes bats at 7 or 8, probably bats at 8, and can get us runs and can bowl like James Anderson, right? Not exactly the same, but very similar to him. So yeah, England's gonna struggle, but I think I will save my judgment completely on their bowling until the World Cup happens, because I want to see how Wood and Wokes get on.
Absolutely. So they've got a lot of challenges as it is already up against this Australian batting lineup. Mm-hmm. So Asjad, let's talk about the possible first Test 11 that England may pick for the first Test at the Gabba, and some of the potential repercussions for England if they do lose the series badly. So Asjad, let's talk about the possible 11 that England may select for the first Test and talk about that. Asjad, if you were Chris Silverwood or Joe Root, what 11 would you select for the first Test come December in Brisbane at the Gabba for that first Ashes Test?
Right, and they have to be English players, don't they? I'm kidding. I was just making a joke. So I start off with, obviously, you have to go with Burns and Hamid because those are the latest openers that you've gone on with. But then I would put Dawud Malan at 3, and I'll have Joe Root at 4. Okay. After that point is where I'm struggling, where I was like, Bairstow, they could have Lawrence, but who do I actually want in my side? Because Bairstow had become Pairstow when he was in India, and for quite some time he got a lot of ducks. So that's a really tough call. I would personally, I can't believe I'm saying this, I would actually go Johnny Bairstow because of his pedigree from what he's done before. And then I'd go Ollie Pope at 6 and Joss Butler at 7. Because I think that kind of dynamic would work quite well. You have Bairstow, who's a brute. You got Ollie Pope, who can pile on the runs and stay at the crease. And then you got Joss Butler, who's not been in the best of nick, but he is a very, very crucial cog. And there's no Ben Folkes as their best keeper. So, I have to go with someone like Joss Butler as their keeper and number 7 batsman. Then this is, again, that's top 7. Now, I said Chris Woakes comes in place of James Anderson. But if I were to pick a side, I might actually put Chris Woakes in. But it's really tough because I'll have to pick one of Broad or Anderson. And I have a feeling England might do that. They might not play both of them together a lot. So for the first test, I might just go Chris Woakes, Ollie Robinson, what's his name? James Anderson, and Mark Wood.
Yeah. We'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, man, because this is the thing. Opening bowlers, 9 times out of 10, you got Anderson and Woakes get the ball to swing for the first 10 overs. After that point, maybe Anderson after 4 or 5 overs, or Woakes after 3, 4 overs is like, all right, they take a step back. Ollie Robinson comes in, all right, bowls about, because he can bowl overs upon overs, can't he? Bowls like 6, 7 overs and gets that line and length right. Very mercurial, very meticulous with his lines, okay? And there's a term that Aaron, the cricket connoisseur, uses called metronomic. He's very metronomic with his lines. He can bowl at the same place over and over and over and over and over again. And that's going to be crucial in Australia. And then you've got Mark Wood, comes in around the 15th, 16th over, comes in and then just bowls absolute bolts, right? That's what his role is. Not the role that he goes around the wicket and bombards them with bouncers. He just needs to bowl pace with good line length, right? It's easier said than done. But he needs to do what Josh Hazelwood or Pat Cummins or Mitchell Starc would be doing from Australia's end, right? He will need to be that pace battery because, no offense, as of this moment, right now, Mark Wood is the fastest bowler in the Ashes, okay? It's not Mitchell Starc. It's not Pat Cummins. Not any of those guys. They have been faster before, but Mark Wood is the quickest, and he's probably the one that I'm counting on to scare the batsman the most. So that 11 for me is probably what I'll go with as a starting point from England.
Absolutely. Asjad, let's talk about the potential repercussions for England. If they lose this Ashes series badly, which is predicted to happen, they may lose 5-0, you never know. There will be a lot of pressure on Chris Silverwood as coach and Joe Root as captain. And the players themselves will be under pressure. So Asjad, what could be the potential repercussions for England if they are to lose this Ashes series? Your thoughts on that to finish up?
Okay. So I don't see Joe Root going anywhere. He's 32, right? Or however old he is. He's early in his 30s. Joe Root, there's going to be no effect on Joe Root's captaincy career. Even if England loses 5-0, and even if Joe Root has a terrible series, Joe Root isn't going anywhere. Chris Silverwood, on the other hand, I think the dynamic they have at the moment kind of works for white ball, but doesn't work as well for red ball. It could be a thought that they have a different coach for the red ball side and have a different coach for the white ball side. It's a thought that I've just had, but I think Chris Silverwood's position for the red ball side might be under a little bit of scrutiny, just a little bit. Okay, England lost to India in England. England lost to India in India. Yes, they beat Sri Lanka in England, but they got hammered by India, right? No, like, not to put it lightly. And going to Australia and losing another Ashes might not be what England needs right now. And that's why I think if there is going to be a change, it might be the coaching side that might be a change if the results go so bad. My early prediction, I know you haven't asked me, I'm gonna tell you anyway. My early prediction is it's 3-1 Australia. I don't think England's gonna go down without. I don't think 5-0 yet, but 3-1 to Australia. I think Australia's gonna win the Ashes, but I think England will show some sort of fight, considering the fact that everyone is counting them out. Everyone is saying England's gonna get hammered, and that's when teams kind of jump back up quite a bit. So yeah, I think Chris Silverwood might be a bit eyeing out, okay, I need to really get this side to win at least a couple of games in Australia. Barring that, I don't see any other repercussions, not instant repercussions. We'll see how next year goes.
Absolutely. Where do you see England winning then if you're going to have them 3-1? In Adelaide, probably? Day night test?
Yeah, that's the tough one, right? I wouldn't be able to tell you where, but I'm going one of the earlier matches. So probably Gabba, probably not, but Adelaide, 100%. I think Adelaide or even MCG, like this is my personal thought from what I gather. I think though match 2 and match 3 might be the 2 matches I think England might be able to win. But barring that, it's an uphill battle for England in this year's in this year's Ashes, not IPL. Sorry.
Absolutely. Well, Asjad, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much, I should say, for joining me for episode 1 of Run Up to the Ashes. I really appreciate you coming on today. So thank you for coming on.
No, you're very welcome. It's always good to be on. Always good to talk cricket with yourself, Jack. So for everyone watching, please like, share, and subscribe to Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. It is a great channel. Talks about a lot of cricket sense. And on top of that, brings in people like Daryl Harper onto his show. Talk about cricket. It's always great. So thank you, man. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Asjad. And make sure you, for those who are watching, go over and check out Asjad's channels, Cricket for Us 2.0, and the latest channel, Cricket and Wrestling for Us. Stay tuned because we've got plenty more Run Up to the Ashes episodes coming your way. Stay excited for that. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. Like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.